He said, "You know not to touch the walls down here, right?" The basement smelled musty, and there was a constant hum from the furnace. I shared a bedroom with Margit. She didn't like to play the way I did, so I spent most of my time alone beneath the house, constructing a miniature world for my toys. Marg once stuffed a pillow under her shirt, declared she was with child, and said a bad guy was after us. She told me we needed to hide, to protect her unborn baby. I remember crawling under her bed while she whispered to me to be quiet. She said, "Try not to breathe." I didn't like playing with her. I didn't want to hold my breath, feel scared, or pretend Margit was grown enough to be a mother. I preferred to imagine we had magic powers. I wanted to pretend we were happy lizards, eating bugs or something. Margit stopped playing with dolls way before I did. My bed was crowded with stuffed animals for years, while hers was bare. She took up reading. She bought makeup. She got into boy bands. She was only 1 year older than me, but I felt like she was elderly, and I had just been born. Adults used to tell us that one day we'd be close, but that never happened. There were times when I thought I hated her. If we weren't sisters, we probably wouldn't have been friends. Though maybe it's harder to be friends with someone who you shared a bedroom and parents with. Maybe if we had met as adults, things would have been different. At 8, I thought of our dank basement as paradise. I built doll houses out of what others thought of as garbage. I used flower pots, egg cartons, and shoe boxes. I looked through our recycling bins regularly, pulling out anything that could be transformed into something for my toys. I made tissue box beds and bottle cap stepping stones. Every inch of the basement was covered in mini streets and neighborhoods. I pretended that the insulation in the walls was cotton candy, and that my toys lived in a utopia where the clouds were made of Barbie pink spun sugar. I told Joe about my toys at home. Most of them came from thrift shops or were hand-me-downs from people my parents knew. I had a name, a history, and a thorough biography for every toy I owned. I collected Barbies, troll dolls, stuffed animals, Polly Pockets, Playmobil, and other little plastic animals and dolls. I told Joe that there was a Lego bridge currently under construction, and a new community garden, which was the corner of the basement where real clover sprouted through the crack in the floor. I described the cotton candy clouds. After my grandma finally selected her new shoes, we approached the cash register. I asked her in my purest voice if we could please buy Joe. She replied no, and my heart sank. I thought I heard Joe gasp, too. I was the type of kid who believed that toys had hearts and souls. I felt like I was ditching a new friend, abandoning Joe in that Walmart. I begged Grandma to reconsider, like I was begging her to allow someone who was drowning into our lifeboat. She said, "No, you have so many dolls already." So I left Joe on a rack with magazines, covered my face with my hands, and cried. About a month later, on my 9th birthday, Grandma gave me a yellow gift bag. I pulled the white tissue paper out, spotted Joe's sparkling eyes, and sobbed. I clarified that she was the Joe I met. She wasn't a different version of the same Barbie. My grandma laughed. "Yes, I bought her the day you asked for her." I snuck her to the cashier with my trainers. She was smiling wider than I had ever seen her smile. The happiness I felt radiated from my 9-year-old body and seeped right into Grandma's. My grandma is dead. That memory might not be uplifting because it features 2 deceased people. That might be depressing. Would you prefer a memory with living people instead? One night, Margit and I skated on that frozen stormwater pond in the center of our neighborhood. The sky was dark, but the snow reflected the moonlight, so I could see Margit's face like it was mid-afternoon. Her cheeks were rosy, and she had snowflakes caught in her eyelashes. Margit and I butted heads a lot growing up. When we were kids, I was hyper and loud. She was quieter and more reserved. We irritated each other. Most of my sisterly memories were tainted by fights we had. When I thought of our parents driving us anywhere, I saw Margit and I in the back seat, arms crossed, huffing. When I thought of our sleepovers at our Aunt Jerry's, I saw us kicking bruises into each other's shins on her pull-out couch. I had scars on my hands where Marg bit me, and I remember ripping out fistfuls of her silky hair. That night, we didn't fight. We looked up at the flurries weaving down from the heavens and tried to catch snowflakes on our tongues. We held each other's mittened hands and spun in circles until our lungs burned from the cold. I remember running home, pretending that the snow on the ground was icing. We played that we were two little candlesticks slipping on an icy cake. We shrieked, "Happy birthday!" as we skidded down the road, imagining our winter hats were candle wicks on fire. Maybe that's a better memory than the other two. Did you prefer it? I felt a sort of run-of-the-mill kind of happiness that night, but maybe that's the superior type. A lot of my memories of my sister, even my happy memories, are complicated. But there were also plenty of times, like that night, when things were simple. Whenever I visualize snow, I always think of that metaphor about how no two snowflakes are the same. That was nailed really hard into me when I was a kid. When I examined snowflakes up close, I wondered whether I was unique too. I walked around all winter thinking I was one of a kind. I thought it that night when I saw the snow caught in Marg's eyelashes. I'm not sure why we tell kids everyone's so unique. We aren't really. I get wanting to make kids feel special, but most people are more of the same. It might be easier to grow up if kids weren't sold this tall tale that we're all exceptional. It might make it less jarring to become an adult if we knew the truth the whole time. We're mostly ordinary. Do you think of this kind of thing when you think of snow? Do stories containing snowflakes make you feel dull and average now too? I'm trying to write positive memories to make you feel good, but I keep missing the mark. Nothing is ever purely good in any case, is it? That's just the truth of it. There is a rotten piece to everything. Whenever you pick up something comely in the wilderness, like a good-looking twig or a nice rock, worms are always exposed, wriggling in the dirt. All I'm trying to get at is that I have felt enormously happy. I cackled around town, drank myself gay, loved a doll, and watched snow plummet from the sky. I can't imagine anyone has felt happiness more profoundly than me. I got to the peak. I don't intend to kill myself because I'm unhappy. This has nothing to do with that. Are you in the right headspace to read this? There are a few practical things I'd like to address now, but before diving in, I just want to check in with you. Are you okay? My primary intention for this note is to cheer you up. However, it's inescapable that suicide notes read a bit grim. Every attempt at this I've made so far has felt heavier than I intended. Part of the complication is that I am in the right headspace. I can see the upside to this. However, I can also appreciate that others might not feel as optimistic as me, the suicidal person. I want you to know that I did this because I was depressed. I'm not depressed. In fact, I feel great. Don't get me wrong, my life isn't perfect. I didn't graduate high school. I live in a basement. I worked thanklessly at the Dollar Pal, and I keep getting into arguments with my family. I can see how you might spin that to argue I died of misery. I really didn't, though. Things were going well. I was making my own money. I had my own place. It seems a shame to waste a pile of perfectly good, life-saving organs, doesn't it? It is terrible to think of someone dying due to my squandered pancreas. I'll let you decide for yourselves. I'm not going to force your hand into pretending I haven't been intimate with women. I have been, and if you are not comfortable pretending otherwise, and the donation people don't want my organs, that's fine. Maybe you could donate what's left of me to science. I think that might mean scientists will handle my naked body, which is a shame, but that's okay. If you get wind that someone I once knew has become a scientist and might run into my cadaver, could you please ask them to request someone else's? It is no big deal if you can't, but if it's easy. I heard about this guy who donated his wife's body to science.
She was blown up in missile testing. He was distraught. He didn't feel like that was the best use of her. He wanted her to be used to cure a degenerative disease or something. I don't mind if they use me for missile testing. In fact, maybe suggest it. That way we can spare folks like that guy from having their wife's body blasted. Is this getting too morbid? It's tough to avoid being morbid in a suicide note. I'm sorry if I'm making you feel uncomfortable. Marg, maybe you should erase this. What do you think? Does it matter more that I express my will and testament in terms of donating my organs, or that I don't make people feel icky? I have you listed as my next of kin, Marg. Maybe you could handle this whole organ job privately and erase this part of the note? If you can't figure out a way to donate me, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Either way, I don't recommend telling Jerry that I wanted to be donated to science. She doesn't trust scientists. She thinks they planted the dinosaur bones. She thinks most fossils are fake and that vaccines are part of some pedophilic agenda to kill old people. I can't bear to imagine what she would think scientists want with my corpse. I would prefer no funeral, but if you would like one, please tell everyone to wear yellow. Better yet, treat it like a Halloween party. Come dressed as peacocks or corpse brides. Tell everyone they can't wear black unless it's part of their costume. Please dispose of my phone and my computer without looking at their contents. I did my best to erase what I could, but I was not as technologically savvy as I would have liked. I would prefer to die knowing someone better apt will sort that all out. I don't want to find myself rolling around in my grave while you discover some of the more humbling aspects of my search history. Please also dispose of my diary. I considered burning it myself, but I live in a basement apartment, and I didn't want to accidentally murder the people who live above me. I also didn't want to get fined by the fire department for burning it out on the lawn. When I was 16, I burned my school notes in my parents' backyard. I was celebrating the summer holiday. It was a small fire. It didn't last long. Nevertheless, we got a warning from the city. They sent an ambulance, 2 cop cars, and a fire truck. I was treated like an arsonist for lighting up a couple of shabby notebooks. The sirens inconvenienced the neighbors. My parents were incensed. Any time they found a lighter in my pocket from then on, they thought I'd been out starting fires again. Meanwhile, I was just innocently making apple pipes and smoking weed in people's garages. I found it strange that Drysdale devoted so many resources to one 16-year-old burning her homework, and so little to some of our bigger issues, like the opioid epidemic, homelessness, and rampant hate crimes, but I guess that's none of my business. If you're asked to identify my body, you might need to know about a few tattoos you're probably unaware of. If you see them and question whether the body is really mine, it is. I've been wearing clothing that hides them. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, though I suspect the criticisms I would have received are moot now. You will never get a good job. You are going to look weird when you're old, etc. I have a great white shark tattooed to my chest, a piece of Lego tattooed to my foot, a skull on my shoulder, and Revelation 17:5 KJV on my back. That's the biblical passage, Revelation 17:5 KJV. I got that one with Greta. She got it on her shin. It's a friendship tattoo. Consider not telling old people I died. I don't think they need to know. Just pretend I can't come to events. Give them generic updates about my life, and spare them the news. Realistically, I only see those people once every couple of years, and they only have a few years left in them. Why trouble them? Let's approach this the same way we have approached my sexual orientation. I think they could die none the wiser, don't you? I Googled the cost of caskets, and it's criminal. Please bury me in a garbage bag. I have also discovered that tombstones, which are just slabs of rock, cost thousands. Please consider laying a patio stone where you bury me. They make patio stones that say things like Grandma's Garden and Love Grows Here. I think they could make one with my name on it. Maybe you could get them to write something funny. I bet asking tombstone makers to carve jokes on stones is more uncomfortable than asking someone to produce a novelty garden rock. Get them to write "buried alive" or "help" on mine. That might be funny. Or you could skip the stone entirely. It feels like a needless cost, doesn't it? Though it is worth considering that there's a practical benefit to having a marker where a body is buried. My grandma dug up part of her garden one summer when Marg and I were kids. She wanted to grow rhubarb or zucchini or something. Sadly, while digging, she uncovered the remains of a big dog. I remember seeing its skull. Grandma was an avid Great Dane owner. She always had one. The gruesome discovery just about brought her to her knees. A family had lived in the house before her, so the remains must have been of their old pet. It would have been nice for her to have been given some warning via a tombstone. I imagine that scenario would play out even more grimly with human remains, though my grandma really loved Great Danes. I feel bad leaving everyone with my death's expenses. I wish I had saved up for this. I didn't know it was so pricey. If you can't find an affordable approach to my death, just drop me at the dump, okay? Toss me on a landfill. This is getting too morbid again, isn't it? Do you think I'm being insensitive and gruesome? That isn't my intention. I'm trying to do what Marg always suggested I do, which is be polite. I know you won't really throw me out at the dump. Offering that suggestion was my roundabout way of communicating that anything you do is generous. If I wrote, "Frankly, anything you do is generous," you might suspect me of being self-serving. You might think I was just trying to appear kind-hearted. It's rude to try to appear kind-hearted, right? The polite thing to do is to communicate that anything you do is generous without implying that I am wonderful for saying so. The only way that I can think to do that is to establish that I'm horrible by writing things like, "Bury me in a garbage bag." Do you get it? I never really honed being well-mannered, did I? My instinct is to be direct, but that's often rude. For example, you can't say, "I want to go now" when you want to go. You have to say, "Well, I've had a lovely time, but sadly I'm beat," even when you are an insomniac or you've had espresso and know you're going to be up for hours. Sometimes I think I accidentally made up white lies that were ruder than telling the truth. I'm sorry if this is rude, but I'm going to be direct now. I feel terrible for killing myself. I really do. I had to do it, given my circumstances, but it's not lost on me what a burden this is. I wish there were some other way.
High-tension, dark romance narration, Joe Arden style. I know you're all very busy, and that you have enough on your plates without having to deal with the costs and logistics of my untimely death. To be even more direct, I know that the cost and logistics of this aren't the biggest burdens I'm leaving you with. It's awful when someone dies. When Grandma died, I felt torn in two. It's probably worse in this case because I'm young, and I doubt anyone expected this. The least I can do now is assure you that you should buy the cheapest death supplies you can find for me. Get me the plot in the graveyard next to the bathrooms or in the corner where they bury the murderers. Sorry, I'm doing it again. Attempt 6. I hope that girlfriend I recently broke up with doesn't read this. Actually, she wasn't really my girlfriend. We didn't put a label on it. She's left town, but there's a chance she might come back knocking on my door. If she finds out I died, she'll be very upset. She said, "Creeps like us have to stay alive." She always talked about how important it is for there to be creeps roaming the earth. I don't know why she thought I was a creep. I think her definition of creep might be different from mine. If you run into a 20-something girl with purple hair and a tattoo of a black cat on her shoulder, wandering around town searching for a creep, don't tell her I died. Say I was abducted by aliens or something. Say I joined some counterculture anarchist community. She'd be into that. I deactivated all my social media accounts and would like to ask that no one create any content on the web regarding me. Please do not name any charities after me. Don't share a photo of me on my birthday or my death day. While I appreciate the sentiment, I don't want that kind of attention. I would prefer to die a quiet death. Remember when Mom tried to throw me a birthday party last year and I refused to come, and everyone was mad at me? And Jerry posted that huge block of text on the internet about how Mom put all that work into the event and I didn't show up because I have issues? I'm sorry about that. I wanted to come, but Jerry was right. I did have issues. I would like to address Jerry, Mog, and everyone else who replied to Jerry's post last year. I imagine you might feel a bit remorseful now that I'm dead. You posted negative comments on the internet about a person who killed themselves. I'm sorry for putting you in that position. I will be honest and admit that a small part of me feels vindicated because there were about a dozen harsh comments under that post calling me rude. I feel like everyone who commented lost sight of the fact that, despite it being true that I was rude, it was nonetheless my birthday. Despite all of that, I would like to acknowledge and forgive you. Please don't beat yourselves up about it. I wonder if anyone is actually going to read this. Did you throw this out? Has this been flushed down a toilet? Am I writing to myself? Hello, Margit. How are you? I'm good. I got an unexpected day off work due to another bomb threat. I hope, if anyone is reading, they're feeling good too. Do you think they are feeling sad because I'm dead? Probably, yes. It's always sad when people die. Hopefully they're not too sad, though. Are you too sad, possible reader? How is your headspace? If it's bad, you should try to get your adrenaline pumping. Try introducing yourself to a stranger, taking a cold shower, singing karaoke, or telling someone a secret. Dopamine is harder to voluntarily produce than adrenaline, and they are similar hormones. If that doesn't work, maybe go pour yourself a glass of water, eat some cruciferous vegetables, take a nap, and try to get some vitamin D. I've also heard that omega-3 fatty acids and magnesium are beneficial for mood. It might help to take a walk. Try that and come back. I don't want killjoys dampening the mood of my death note. Are you wondering why someone like me, a suicidal person who has assured you that I am not depressed, knew so much about dopamine and omega-3 fatty acids? While I recognize that might seem suspicious, given the context, I promise I really am not depressed. The girl I was dating was, though. She saw a therapist, took Zoloft and everything. In addition to those forms of treatment, she also did things like eat fortified cereals and exercise. She said that helped her. When that didn't work, and she felt especially low, she would do things that scared her. Her dad died right before we met. She was going through a tough time. She behaved a bit manically. She wanted to do dangerous things. We often spent our time together climbing on the roofs of tall buildings at night, driving over the speed limit, and doing ecstasy and intense activities. I'll spare you the details of some of our more intense activities. While I would get a posthumous kick out of my suicide note being a detailed account of the intense activities I was having before I died, I have an inkling that might put my family off. Are you mad at me? It's okay if you are. Is my tone making you madder? I bet it is. I bet you're furious. Your cheeks are getting so red. Turn around. I'm standing right behind you. Made you look. I'm not really standing behind you. I'm dead. And again, I'm sorry if you're pissed at me about that, or about my tone. I recognize that, despite wishing this could be treated as trivial, there is gravity to it. I get that. I do. In normal circumstances, I would classify suicide as tragic. I just think that we should approach my particular death a little more gaily. And as the victim of this, I would like to ask that you extend me that courtesy. Now, you might be thinking that I am also the perpetrator of this, and while that's fair, I didn't have much of a choice. I don't want to get into all of that. That is not the point of this. The point of this is to tell you all goodbye and good luck.
I want each of you to know that I had no hard feelings toward you. I wish you well, and I don't plan to haunt any of you. Not even you, Jerry. Attempt 7. Erase everything I've written so far, Marg. The tone was off and it was all over the place. I wasn't accomplishing what I set out to do. Please consider that rough work. Consider it trash. I'm trying again. This time will be better because I've warmed myself up. I'm going to make this attempt more formal. I think that will improve it. When you write too informally, it reads psychopathic. I want this attempt to be more official. I want people to read this and think, wow, she really knew what she was doing. Dear family, friends, and colleagues, it is with utmost regret that I must inform you I have passed away. The circumstances surrounding my death are complicated, but technically, in terms of what the coroner will classify this as, it was suicide. I apologize for the disquiet you might feel given the circumstances and for all the hassle. I want to assure you that while I am sad I won't see you again in this life, I'm not dying due to sadness. This isn't that kind of suicide. I had terminal brain cancer. Rather than succumb to that, I chose to die peacefully, with pain pills or something. I am still working that part out. All to say, please don't worry about me. Regards, Sigrid. How was that? Is it too formal now? Did you find it stiff? I should change regards to love, right? Suicide notes probably warrant a love closing. I don't know who is going to read this, though. There are a few people I don't love who might. If that girl I was seeing read it, for example, it might freak her out. We were only dating for like 4 months. What if my coworkers read it? I don't want to sign off love to the people who work at the Dollar Pal. That's unprofessional. Should I mention the cancer? I feel weird about that, mostly because I don't really have cancer. I just wrote that I did in that letter because I thought it would make things cleaner and easier to explain. It's sort of like when Mom said we couldn't go to Disney World as kids because Disney was closed, when really it was because we couldn't afford it.
It was just the idea that a supposedly fascinating person who lived and died years ago existed in the spots I stood. I felt sort of reborn, sensing how both enormous and puny the world was at that moment. Rabbit looked at me and grinned in a way I think signaled that they felt the same way, though in retrospect they may have just been showing me their teeth. I'm not sorry I went on that trip, but I am sorry I didn't tell anyone about it. That was irresponsible. I didn't want to be told not to go. I didn't want Mom or Dad to say it was a bad use of my tax return, or for Jerry to say it was dangerous, or for anyone to freak me out about it. I just wanted to go. Nothing was ever as simple as I wished it were. There's this domino effect to every haphazard choice we make. We're all in this web together. Because I didn't tell anyone I went to France, I accidentally ditched my own birthday party. I totally forgot about it. Everyone was so mad at me. I couldn't explain myself. I just wanted to be happy, but sometimes your own happiness comes at the expense of other people's, doesn't it? It's hard to balance being both happy and considerate. I often tried to be both by lying, but that usually made it worse. I lied about why I didn't graduate high school. I said it was because I was lazy and I didn't do my homework. I said I was preoccupied with skipping class to smoke weed. That wasn't the whole truth. I did skip class to smoke weed sometimes, but I also did most of my homework. At first, I was afraid to hand it in. Margit had done most of my homework in earlier years, and I knew she was a better writer. I struggled to focus. I think I had attention deficit disorder or something. I was always daydreaming. I felt restless in class. Mom and Dad weren't particularly book smart, so they couldn't help me. Dad didn't graduate high school, and Mom just scraped by. But Margit loved to read.
I used to joke that she was adopted because I don't know where she came from. Her teachers put gold star stickers on her assignments. Her homework was held up as the good example in class. To her credit, she tried to help me with my schoolwork, but she was controlling. She always took over completely when she tried to help. After she moved out, I tried to mimic her writing style. While there was a noticeable decline in my grades, no teachers caught on to why. My marks were worse, but overall, I was doing okay. I was passing. I had to pass my final English assignment to complete the class and graduate. It was a paper about Hamlet. While I pored over my notes, I thought about how I had to finish 12th grade to move on to the next stage of my life. To escape Drysdale, I needed to get into college. I had no money to move away without student loans. I had applied to 3 schools and was waitlisted at 2, rejected at 1. While I read Hamlet, I started to think a little too much about how I was a teenager and how soon I'd become an adult. I felt like I was on a sinking ship again. I was supposed to have studied Romeo and Juliet in 9th grade, Macbeth in 10th grade, and A Midsummer Night's Dream in 11th. But I hadn't. Margit had. Hamlet was the first Shakespeare I had ever actually read, and I didn't get it. I remember reading that to be or not to be speech and thinking, what does this really mean? I hesitated. I wanted more time to consider the repercussions of not reading the Shakespeare plays I was supposed to by my age. I wanted more time to figure out my next step. I wanted to stay on the boat I was on. I felt like I had just gotten on it. I didn't feel ready to hop onto a new one yet. I wanted more time to understand Hamlet. I didn't hand in my final essay because I choked. I know that's a shoddy reason not to hand it in and to fail high school, but it's the truth. I should have just handed a draft in, prayed I passed, and got out of there, but I didn't. I'm not sure why I lied about this. I usually lie in an attempt to be polite, I think. That's what Marge always told me to do. I said I had IBS, for example, so that I didn't have to say that I was tired of someone's company. I said I was bisexual to appease people. I didn't mention going to France because I knew everyone would say I shouldn't go and would be worried about me. I didn't want to needlessly ruffle feathers. That's not why I lied about high school. I didn't lie about that to be polite. I guess sometimes I lied for no good reason, or for reasons that just served me. Before I died, I was seeing that girl, and I lied to her every time I saw her. For one, she misheard me when I told her my name. We met in that thrift store off Main Street. I was tilting my head, looking down at a photo plaque of Meryl Streep. She approached me while I considered buying the photo. She said, "Are you a fan of Meryl's?" in a tone that I could tell also meant, "Are you gay?" I nodded, and she said, "Me too." She then told me her name. I told her my name was Sigrid, but she misheard me. She thought I said Astrid. I should have corrected her, but I didn't. Not because I felt tongue-tied or anxious, I just felt like pretending. I took the opportunity to lie. I wanted to try on being a different person. I was feeling bad for myself. I was insecure about my menial job, not going to school, and moving away. I thought maybe I'd have fun pretending to be someone different. I also thought it was unlikely for someone to like me if I were just myself. She typed my name as Astrid in her phone, and we started texting. I put on a sort of Astrid persona, pretending I was saving up to move to the East Coast, even though I wasn't. I said I wanted to be a writer, even though I was terrible at it. I told her my favorite book was the Iliad, but I'd never read it. I didn't even know what it was. Is it about a flower? I had seen it in a stack of Margit school books. I said I had no social media because I cared about internet privacy. I blocked her on every platform, and as an extra precaution, I changed my profile pictures to scenery without my face in it. I don't know why I did any of that. I liked her, and I felt bad that I had been so dishonest. By the time I realized I had made a mess of things, it was too late for me to fix it. It became a headache. I was always worried I would run into someone in town who knew me and who would refer to me as Sigrid in front of her. Whenever she'd meet me at the Dollar Pal, I had to stealthily remove my name tag. She picked me up every time there was a bomb threat. She didn't have a job, so she was often bored and always wanted to hang out. She was seemingly happy I kept getting unplanned days off. Once, a cop who had spoken to me during previous evacuations stopped me on my way to her car. Her window was rolled down. I worried he'd say my real name within earshot of her. Thankfully, he didn't. He said, "Have you seen anything suspicious?" I said no. I always said no to the cops. The truth is, I saw a lot of suspicious things. In fact, there were specific people I suspected might be behind the threats. There was this one guy who came in the store at noon a few times a week to grab his lunch. He went to adult ed in the building. I noticed him because we went to high school together. He dropped out like I did. When we were teenagers, he and I occasionally smoked weed together. There was one night when I was with him, Greta, and a crowd of kids. He said he didn't want to go to school the next day. We all agreed. None of us wanted to go. That night, we all watched him call the school from a payphone and leave a message. He said someone was planning to bring a gun to school the next day. School was canceled. It made the local news. It became difficult to gauge which lies were acceptable. Sometimes lying feels like pretending. It's harmless, like April Fools. It's fun. It's kinder to lie sometimes, right? Lying can make people feel better. We tell people they look good when they don't. We tell people we like the food they cooked when we didn't.
There are other lies that cross a line, though. Brazen, shameless lies that could hurt somebody. I think this was one of those. When I saw him in the store, we talked about how he was going back to school. He said he wanted to better himself. He wanted to go to college, get a job, become a lawyer maybe. It would be strange for him to take the initiative to return to school just to send out false bomb threats, but he did have a history of taking similar extreme measures to play hooky. I often wondered if he made the threats. There are government offices in that building. That's where people get employment services, like Social Security and disability support. A lot of Drysdale residents live in poverty. The place is rife with unemployment. There used to be a bunch of car factories on the outskirts of town, but most have closed in the last decade or so. Now we just have vacant buildings. There are many people around town who moan about residents who rely on government assistance. On the first of the month, when people get their government checks, it's hard to get through the day without hearing someone quip that McDonald's, Walmart, and the Dollar Pal are going to be busy. There was one customer who, like clockwork, said, "I'm glad our taxes pay for their Big Macs." He said, "You know why it's so busy in your store today, right?" I tried not to engage with him. I scanned his items and gritted my teeth, but still, he habitually ranted to me about government handouts and his precious tax dollars. He seemed fanatical. Once, after a bomb threat, he joked, "I hope someone does eventually bomb that place for real." I wouldn't be shocked to learn he was calling in the threats to disrupt the social services, to stick it to the poor people. I didn't tell the cops about any of my suspicions because I didn't like the cops. I had a number of problematic run-ins with them as a teenager. Once, a cop stole my lighter. I didn't even have weed on me, let alone a cigarette. He said I had no business with it. I said he had no right to take it, but he did anyway. The girl I was seeing didn't like cops either. She called them the pigs. I always wondered why calling cops pigs was disparaging. I'd rather be a pig than a cop. Pigs are adorable. If anything, it's a compliment. If I walked around town and everyone called me a pig, I'd think, this is amazing. It would feel like we were all playing some cute make-believe game. I wish adults did things like pretend to be pigs more often.
I remember being a kid and approaching other kids saying, "Hi, I'm a dinosaur," and them roaring with me without any reluctance. We had this shared understanding. I felt connected to people. I found it easier to relate to people when we could be dinosaurs. I found it harder to click with others as I got older. I worried I didn't think the same way other adults thought. I worried I might be abnormal or stunted. Even when I was little, I struggled to play with some kids. Marg and I didn't play well together for one. I never liked playing house, styling my doll's hair, or pretending to be an adult. I didn't want to play that I was a mother, a wife, a teacher, or a nurse. I didn't want to imagine there were bad guys after me or something to run from. I preferred happy games. I wanted to be a goblin. For me, being grown up felt similar to playing a board game without understanding the instructions. It wasn't a colorful, jazzy board game either. It wasn't Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, or Hungry Hungry Hippos. It was all math and rules, a lifeless, restrictive game that I wasn't good at and I didn't understand. I used to spend all my spare time rooting through my imagination. My bed was never a bed. It was a castle, it was a boat. When I looked up at the ceiling, I imagined the world was upside down. When I ate ice cream, I stirred it until it melted and pretended I was shoveling mud into my mouth. I was rarely myself. I was a necromancer, a shark, a monster. I couldn't wait to get home from school, descend to the basement, and hold a Barbie. Where does that creativity go, I wonder? Why do we lose that? I'm not sure I did lose it, to be honest. I think maybe I still had the drive to make believe, but I had no good way to channel it. It was misfiring inside me. Maybe I lied to that girl I was seeing to feel like I did with my toys. Maybe I was trying to hold myself like a doll. Maybe I was weaving a make-believe story for myself, as if I were a Barbie, not a human, and without considering that she was a person too. On my end, it felt less like lying than it did like playing. At first, I found it fun. I just wanted to be another person. I found it difficult to be myself. It's easier to pretend to be someone else than it is to be my real, authentic self. There are fewer stakes. When I'm not myself and people reject me or I don't fit in, I don't have to take it personally. They weren't really rejecting me. Being my real self makes me more vulnerable. When I operate in life as if I'm playing a game, losing feels less significant. I can just start over, play again. I don't think I lied about failing high school for fun. I don't think that lie was like the Astrid lie. It was never entertaining to claim I failed because I didn't try or because I skipped class to smoke weed. It was just less embarrassing to say that than it was to explain that I failed because I didn't understand Hamlet. I have never been particularly good at explaining myself. Sometimes I thought it was better to lie to spare people having to endure my attempt to explain myself. Maybe that's a cop-out. Maybe I told myself that because it served me to think that way. It's hard for me to understand when a lie is better than the truth. I understand in theory why it can be better to lie to spare someone's feelings or to make people comfortable. In practice, however, it's tough for me to gauge how other people feel or what might make them feel comfortable. Margit was always the one who was good at that. I think knowing some lies were okay set me up to lie to satisfy myself. I felt better saying I failed high school because I didn't try. I said my name was Astrid for fun. I prefer black and white rules. I would prefer to be told to never lie rather than be told I should lie sometimes. I think when rules are gray, we think about them too much. Nothing is really right or wrong when you think about it too much. Generally, I prefer honesty. When you lie, you have to uphold the lie with more lies. It can get so complicated. You end up doing things like missing your own birthday party and hiding your name tag at work. You risk upsetting people. I don't know which lies I should ask forgiveness for right now. I used to be dragged to confession all the time when I was a kid. The school would bring our classes once a month, and Mom took me and Marg sometimes. I remember sitting with Father Francis, admitting to a list of my transgressions, and then worrying as I did my penance that I had missed something. I knew how to confess to sins like stealing and pinching Margit, but I didn't know how to confess to sins that felt cloudier. For example, I often lied to my parents to spare Margit. She and I fought a lot, and she was stronger than me, and sometimes she really hurt me. My parents would storm into our bedroom in swamp monster form, and I would pretend it was an accident. I would say, Margit didn't do anything wrong. Was lying then still a sin if I lied so she wouldn't get hurt? I have no idea. Life would have been a lot easier for me if I could have just been honest. I lied earlier when I mentioned Greta. I pretended not to know why we weren't friends anymore. I know why. It's because she developed an opioid addiction. She and I snorted OxyContin off a butter knife for the first time together in a garage 2 summers ago. The garage owner had just had his wisdom teeth yanked. His orthodontist gave him a prescription. When he offered it to us, I said yes before Greta did.
I was watching the salt shaker groom itself, while Marge said, "And what about you, Sig?" Jerry said, "Yeah, what are your big life plans?" On my first day of kindergarten, I sat in a short, orange chair at a circular table surrounded by other kids. There was a bouquet of crayons in the center of the table. Our teacher instructed us to draw what we wanted to be when we grew up. Most kids drew ballerinas, athletes, race car drivers, and that sort of thing. I drew a great white shark. I remember my teacher telling me I couldn't be an animal. Animals weren't occupations, but that she liked the creativity. My parents put my shark drawing on the fridge. It was there for years. It became a family joke that I wanted to be a fish. They couldn't tell that it was a drawing of a shark, and I felt too humbled by the situation to correct them. I just went along with it. I laughed with them. I made a fish face by sucking in my cheeks and puckering my lips. I got a shark tattooed to my chest last year. To be honest, I didn't put that much thought into why I got it. I just thought it looked cool. In retrospect, I think it meant something. I always wanted to be something I couldn't be. Recently, I was having a bath and looked down at my body in the water. My chest and stomach looked paler than usual. I looked into the eyes of my tattoo to see if it would blink. It didn't. But sharks don't have eyelids. They just have this membrane that closes before they bite something. While inspecting my tattoo, I noticed slits along my ribs. It looked as if I had been slashed with a big hunting knife or something. I felt my skin there and inhaled, and I swear, it felt like I was breathing through gills. I know I couldn't breathe through gills. I know that I imagined that. However, something was obviously wrong with me. I didn't know how long I would have before I stopped knowing what was real and what wasn't. I had cracked. I was going insane. I always had a big imagination, but you can't have a big imagination when you grow up, unless you're using it to design video games or write fantasy novels or something. It's not normal to be an adult and to think the way I did. I was nuts. I think if it went on, you might have found me dead, floating face first in a creek, thinking I could breathe there. That would be worse than this, right? I didn't want to die screaming that I was a fish. Like everyone in their early 20s, the girl I was seeing talked a lot about what she wanted to do with her future too. Unlike Margit, she hadn't memorized her speech yet. She was still struggling to write it. Once, we were trespassing on a stranger's farm outside town. It had just gotten dark. She was whispering about her dreams while we skulked past a herd of nosy cows. She said she wasn't sure if she wanted to become an animator, a graphic designer, or if she should just paint things and hope they sell. She considered that maybe she should get into tattooing, or maybe become a political radical, cause a lot of trouble. She wondered if she should drop out of school. She asked me what I thought. The cows were drawing attention to us. They crowded by the fence we walked beside. A few of them mooed. I whispered,
Well, you know what they say, to thine own self be true, or whatever. When I was pretending to be Astrid, I always said unpleasant things like that. I tried to sound smart, like I read Hamlet. We were planning to climb up an old silo. We couldn't think of anything to do, glanced around, and saw the silo and the skyline. She asked me what I wanted to be. I was pretending to be Astrid, so I wrote a speech for her. I said I wanted to write picture books about sharks. I suggested maybe she could be the illustrator. While she ran with that idea, I saw the sky open. In the dark clouds, I saw God's old man face frown down at me. I jumped and looked at her to see if she saw him too, but she didn't. She wasn't paying attention. She was busy rubbing her hands on her shirt, preparing to climb up the side of the silo. I followed behind her. The ladder was old and rusty. It was made of these metal steps that were welded into the side of the cement. Some of the steps were deformed. Despite the run-down state of the ladder, we climbed all the way up the silo. My hands got sweaty near the top. Once she reached the last step, I hovered a little lower beneath her. We were at least 40 feet above the ground. The cows under us looked like miniature toys. I felt a bit like I did when I was in the basement, looking down at my tiny toy world. I looked up at the sky above her. It was dark, and the clouds were gray. God's face had disappeared. When I looked back down, I joked, "Should we jump? I think I have early onset dementia or something. I hallucinate most when the sun goes down. Apparently, that's a symptom. I often feel withdrawn and chaotic. Those are symptoms too." I wrote before that I had an aortic aneurysm so it would be more cut and dried. I wanted to make it easier for you to get on the same page as me. I thought you'd be more likely to understand why I killed myself if I pretended to have some medical condition. I also thought it might be less upsetting to accept I died of a physical ailment than it would be to stomach that something was wrong with me mentally. I don't know much about metaphors. I was terrible in English, but I remember Miss Sweet explaining that in that confusing to be or not to be speech, Hamlet uses a mixed metaphor. He says, "Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them." To me, that's complete nonsense. However, my teacher said Hamlet was comparing his misfortunes to someone attacking him and to the sea. Those are metaphors, I think. He wasn't really talking about the sea or about being attacked. What he was talking about remains a mystery to me, but you get the point. It's symbolism. In a metaphorical way, I did have an aneurysm, or cancer. I was stunted by symbolic tumors in my brain that made me hallucinate and feel hopeless. In a less Shakespearean way, however, I don't know what it was. I was seeing things. I was losing my grip on reality. It was getting worse every day. I know that all of you would probably make a different choice if you were in my shoes. You might get specialists involved. You might ride it out, move in with your parents, live in a group home. That's why I lied. I wanted you to reach the same conclusion as me without having to understand why this is different for me. I am a different person than you are. I'm hesitant to spell that out because in similar situations in the past, I never successfully got that point across. I think people often judge others by their own standards. For example, some people who are gripped by weight loss and diet culture look at other people who eat high-calorie foods and think, why would they eat like that? I would never eat like that. I have things figured out and they don't. Why don't they act like me? It doesn't occur to them that other people don't care about weight loss or diet, or that maybe they did in the past and overcame it. They don't realize that the people who aren't dieting might look at those and think, why would they eat like that? I would never eat like that. I have things figured out and they don't. Why don't they act like me? I think my mom didn't understand how I could be gay because she wasn't. Her lens on the world was different from mine. She viewed me being gay the way she would view herself being gay. The only reason she could come up with for why she would be gay is to get attention and bother people. She didn't grasp that someone could genuinely experience the world differently than her. Queer people do it too sometimes. For example, the girl I was seeing often said, everyone's a little gay, because she was bisexual, and that was her worldview. I was not Margit. That's why I didn't finish high school.
High-tension, dark romance narration, Joe Arden style. I pictured us being entombed in that mud for a season, until we emerged like frogs do after they hibernate, or until we suffocated and died. Would you rather become a frog or suffocate to death? Marg, when we were kids and our parents were being swamp monsters, did you ever see tentacles growing out of their heads? When Dad punched that hole in our bedroom wall and his fist emerged from the plaster, did you see scales on his knuckles? At Christmas, when Mom kept saying the R word, did her hair look greasy, wet, and green? At Thanksgiving, when Dad said something racist, did it look like all his teeth fell out and like his entire body was coated in this oily green slime? Did anyone else see that? I thought everyone at that table looked slimy. When I went home and I looked in the mirror, I looked greasy too. Did you notice that? Did you ever see tentacles growing out of my head? Attempt 20. I had a stuffed unicorn who liked eating grass in meadows and carrying other toys on her back. Joe would ride her around the basement. The two would talk about flowers and about the human foods that horses could eat, like peppermints and sunflower seeds. I had a group of Polly Pockets named Mallory, Ainsley, and Corina. They lived in a little purple heart-shaped house with a pink bed and a stone fireplace in it. I played that they were cobbler elves who snuck around the basement at night, helping the other toys with their chores, fixing the broken parts of the world while everyone else was snoozing. I planned birthday parties for my toys. I played that they had magic powers. I played that they built castles. They had dances. They baked cakes. They brewed potions. When I grew up, I realized I could never be a unicorn or a cobbler elf. I could never be a troll, an old man, an astronaut, a shark, or a rat. I would never be a girl who everyone liked. Those weren't options for me. I was assigned the person I am. I had no choice. Even if I got extreme plastic surgery, covered myself in tattoos, buzzed all my hair off, amputated a leg, or gained or lost 100 pounds, there were parts of me I could never change. I was assembled with the bones I came with. I used to listen to music zealously. I used to sing along, impassioned by lyrics I didn't relate to because I imagined someday I might. I could picture being the person singing. I could feel my feet in their shoes. When I got older and heard music I didn't relate to, I shut it off. I don't relate to big, inspirational songs about overcoming obstacles or being a hero. Bright songs that reflect some happy party life sound totally alien to me. I won't ever relate to songs about feeling huge, crushing love. I'm a lesbian in a small town. I can't meet anyone new. I don't have enough life in me to resonate with tragic ballads about revenge or breakups. I can't listen to songs about places I'll never go to. I don't connect with any of them. It's not that I was desperate to be someone else. It's not that I hated myself. It's just that when you get older, you are suddenly required to be the person you are. I felt like I was cast as a character I wasn't able to play. Maybe in a different setting, in a different production, with a different cast, I might have pulled it off. In Drysdale, in the play I was cast in, it wasn't the part for me. This isn't some miserable self-loathing thing. It's just that I don't want this. I could handle being a broke high school dropout, trapped in a conservative small town, surrounded by people who I find, and who find me, insufferable. I would have gritted my teeth and played myself. I could not, however, play that character and also be insane and all alone. It's not the part for me. I felt like my dress rehearsal had ended, and I had grown up.
I was cracked by the trauma of losing my friend, I felt isolated and resentful, and I couldn't picture any future for myself. If I could have picked what I was born to be, I would be a fat little rat at a fair. I would ride the Ferris wheel all night. All the carnival lights would reflect in my happy, beady eyes. I would feast on candy apple cores, discarded peanuts, and melon rinds. I would spook ladies and carnival workers for kicks. When the lights went out and the gates were shut, I would scurry around on the ground, rummage through trash cans, and squeak happily with my rat pals. I would live to be about 2 years old, which is as long as most rats live. I would get my money's worth out of my little rat lifespan, and I would leave the earth happy to have been there. I didn't want to say this because it sounds crazy, but at family dinners, I saw a literal elephant in the room. He was this enormous, deranged elephant. His tusks were covered in blood, and his eyes were all white. He was always huffing at me. I knew I couldn't mention him, so I pretended not to notice him. I said, "Hey, Dad, can you pass the sweet potato casserole?" while the elephant stomped his feet and threatened to crush me. I listened to my family chatter while out of the corner of my eye I watched the elephant pant. Sometimes some of you asked why I seemed so distracted. Jerry often said I seemed far away. "It's impolite to be so disengaged," Marg always said. Whenever I entered the house, I was afraid of that giant elephant. I was worried I would slip up, mention him, and freak you all out. At Christmas, it seemed like everyone else saw him too. I thought I saw Dad feeding him. Did you see him? Were we all pretending we didn't see him? Were you in on something I wasn't? I felt on edge. Sometimes I thought I heard the girl I was seeing whispering things on her phone. I heard her hushing things like, "It's dangerous, you better get out." I lied earlier when I said I had no hard feelings toward any of you. I wanted to pretend I didn't because I had to kill myself, and I didn't want you all to feel bad about that. The truth is, I did have hard feelings toward you. I don't want to guilt trip you about that now, and I'm not saying it because I want you to feel bad. I really don't want you to feel bad. If I could choose, no one would ever feel bad. I wouldn't even want that deranged elephant to feel bad. I wish he could be taken to live in the savannas or wherever elephants are supposed to live. A few weeks ago, Greta's mugshot was posted on Drysdale's community Facebook page. She didn't look like herself. Her lips were cracked. She had this far-off expression. People commented. They wrote things like "trash" and "why is she still allowed to live here?" One person wrote a lengthy comment about an encounter they had with her. They spotted her wandering topless on Main Street. They pulled over and tried to give her a coat. She refused to take it. They insisted, and she hit them. I think maybe they tried to force the coat on her, or maybe she was scared of them for some reason. They wrote that they had to call the cops on her. Greta was taken in for both assault and indecent exposure. Their comment got over 100 likes. People replied, "You are so kind for trying, but people like her are beyond help. This type of person is dangerous. The town needs to do something about them out of here. This is why we need to vote for Kevin Fleiner." I told the girl I was seeing about Greta. I told her how she and I were best friends and how alone I felt without her. I felt sick about it. I couldn't sleep. I cried, telling her about how she used to be. I told her I hated this town. I said, "This place is a cesspool." I hated that no one was doing anything to help. Why wasn't anyone doing anything? Why would they vote for this guy who would make it even worse? He wanted to close the safer supply services and supervised consumption sites in our clinics and community centers. He was going to kill her. I was so afraid to hear she was dead. I told the girl I was seeing that I blamed myself for Greta. I was beside myself. She told me it wasn't my fault and that she wanted to get revenge for Greta.
I almost barfed on the floor. I crouched down. I felt my stomach churn and cold sweat develop on my forehead. I considered begging God to spare me. I lay down on my back, looked up at the dusty light fixture in my ceiling, and tried to think of a bargain I could make with God. Before Sigrid was in the hospital, I spent a lot of time thinking about Mo. I woke up with him on my mind before I even opened my eyes. I'd look at my phone every morning, hoping he'd texted me. He always had. He works part-time as a security guard at the mall to pay for school, and I used to go pretend I needed to shop, but really, I just wanted to run into him. My mind hasn't been on Mo since Sigrid's attempt. I've barely thought of him. Now that I'm beginning to again, I realize how bizarre it is for me to waste so much of my time worrying about how much he likes me. It's strange to think of myself feeling nervous that he'll stop texting me. I overanalyzed his messages and talked to my friends ad nauseum about whether he would ever finally ask me out. I am on the floor of the bathroom hurling into the toilet. There are trucks upside down in ditches. People are dying in hospitals. I called Mo and asked him to be my boyfriend. I was on the bathroom floor, straddling the toilet. I kept retching and spitting into the bowl, but I had nothing in my stomach to throw up. I had my phone up to my ear and a line of spit strung from my mouth into the toilet. I told God I'd ask Mo to be my boyfriend if he'd make me feel better. I figured that God was probably sick of me bugging him about Mo in my prayers. Mo laughed. "What? I thought you weren't interested." I brushed my hair out of my sweaty face and said, "No, I like you a lot." He asked what compelled me to ask him to be my boyfriend, and I said, "Just because." However, the truth is I wanted to feel something good. I felt so profoundly ill that I thought maybe if Mo said he wanted to be my boyfriend, I might feel a little better. He said, "I'd kill to be your boyfriend. I'm surprised you're asking me, though. You've been kinda distant lately. I was worried about you. Is school really weighing on you right now or something? What's been going on?" I said, "Yes, and there's some other things." "Like what?" he asked. Rather than tell him about Sigrid, I told him I was very sick. I stepped in mango, and it made me cry. I also told him about the couple above me. I said, the guy is cheating, and they're always fighting. It was keeping me up at night. I said, I'm worried about the woman. The guy sounds really aggressive. He suggested maybe I should call someone. I said, is that what I'm supposed to do? He said, I don't know. My mom left me a voicemail message. In an angry voice, she asked, do you have your sister's phone? I didn't feel like talking to her after everything that happened with Sigrid. Rather than return her call, I texted her. I wanted to write, don't leave me angry messages, but instead I wrote, I don't have Sig's phone, sorry. She replied, how are we supposed to trust you? Are you lying? Rather than write back, really off, I wrote, I'm not lying, Mom. After my grandma died, I found myself scowling at old women. I felt affronted by their existence. I know that's unreasonable, it's ridiculous, but when I saw any lady over 80, I thought, really, you? Why are you alive when my grandma isn't? Do you deserve to be here more than her? I went to Walmart to buy nylons for her funeral. Before I got out of the car, I watched an old lady hobble through the parking lot as if she murdered my grandma with her own arthritic hands. I gripped the steering wheel and felt incensed at the sight of this frail elderly woman. I had to take deep breaths. After the initial blow of her death, I got over hating old women. I convinced myself I was being ridiculous. I decided it was just a weird reaction to my grief. I had never felt anything like that before. It was strange for my worldview to shift like that. I didn't realize I could think so differently, and in a way that left me feeling disturbed. I wonder if old people are often crotchety because they've dealt with so many atrocities. They can no longer tolerate anyone. Maybe they ask to speak to managers, hold up lines, and drive at a snail's pace because they're at the end of their ropes. Maybe all their people have died, gotten sick, or tried to kill themselves, and it's irksome to see the rest of us tottering around, breathing air, taking up space. I called Mo again and told him my theory about old people. I told him, I hope I don't feel like that when I'm old. I don't want to scowl at children.
I don't want to feel resentful of other people for just existing. I want to do the opposite. I want to appreciate people. I didn't tell Mo this, but last week, when Sigrid was in the hospital, I worried I was going to feel that way again. I worried I'd walk around hating people who reminded me of her. That would include any young woman, people who smoke, lesbians, imaginative people, anyone with a tattoo, people with ADD, opinionated people, anyone with no social filter, little girls holding toys, anyone laughing, and people with sisters. Mo said, "Some old people are nice." He then told me about his great-aunt. Her name is Ida. "Nicest lady you'll ever meet," he said. "Always chatting with strangers, gives everyone $1. And she's always finding injured baby animals and helping them. She feeds them with this water dropper. She's like 90 years old, and she's always nursing baby rabbits and birds." Drysdale is live streaming the mayoral debate. The election is next week. I am lying next to Mo in my bed, and we're watching the candidates discuss whether libraries should have gay picture books in them. Mo has never been to Drysdale, but I've told him about it. Once, at a party, while I was crying to him about my childhood, he said he'd like to visit Drysdale with me. He said he wants to see where I grew up. He asked if we could go for a drive sometime. He told me he was interested in small towns. He's a geography student. Regarding the gay picture books, Kevin said they should be removed. Another candidate named Desmond said they should be put someplace separate from the other books, on a shelf you have to request access for. A candidate named Lisa, who has absolutely no chance of winning, said, "Yes, of course, we need those on the shelves." Mo said, "Well, I hope Lisa wins." I assured him she won't. Mo and I fell asleep watching the debate. We woke up at 2 a.m. to the couple above us fighting. It sounded like the man just got home. His girlfriend was confronting him. She cried, "Where were you?" He yelled, "I was working. Leave me alone. It's none of your business." I turned on my bedside light, and Mo and I looked at each other with concern. After about 5 minutes of listening to their shouting escalate, Mo climbed out of bed. He started putting his socks on. He said, "I think I have to go up there." Just as he reached for the doorknob, we could hear them calming down. The man said, "I'm sorry." Sigrid was released from inpatient care yesterday. Jerry and my parents pooled some money to pay for an outpatient psychiatrist. It's expensive, I guess. She's going to move out of her apartment and stay at Mom and Dad's for a while. I drove to Drysdale to help her pack, despite needing to study for an exam tomorrow. I hadn't seen her since the hospital. I thought maybe I might hug her or say something important, but I didn't. I looked at her, she looked at me, and we nodded. She asked me if I had her phone. I said, "No, sorry, I don't." While we assembled boxes and packed up her things, she asked, "Did you clean up in here while I was in the hospital?" I said, "I don't remember." She frowned. I noticed the bag she brought with her had a journal in it. I asked, "Are you keeping a diary?" She said, "Yeah, they asked me to in therapy. I can't find my old journal. Did you take it?" I said, "No," even though I did, and asked what else they told her to do.
Mo and I went for a drive and ended up in Drysdale. We drove up and down Main Street. I pointed out my old high school and the laundromat I worked at. We drove by my grandma's old house and the old movie theater. I said, "That's where I had my first date." I told him my stories about being a kid in Drysdale. He slowed down whenever I had something to say. He listened to me, rapt, while I pointed out a play structure where I broke my arm. He looked with interest at the house where I played Spin the Bottle, and laughed when I told him I'd punched a boy in the face there for calling my friend June an unpleasant person. We drove by the hospital, and I didn't say anything about it, but he put his hand on my leg and squeezed while we drove past. We pulled over outside my parents' place. It was nighttime, and all the lights were off. We got out of the car, leaned on the hood, and stared at the house. It looked smaller than usual. I pointed out the windows in the basement. I told him, "A raccoon broke in once." We stared until a car pulled up. I couldn't tell who was driving because it had its brights on, but by the time it parked, I saw it was Sigrid. She climbed out of the car with a cigarette in her mouth. She approached us and said, "Is that Marg? What are you doing here?"
She looked at Mo and said, "Who are you?" I caught myself before correcting her. I almost said, "That's not a polite way to ask someone their name." Instead, I let Mo introduce himself. He shook her hand. "Nice to meet you. I'm Mo." "Who's Mo?" she asked me, while still shaking his hand. Again, I resisted the urge to correct her. I said, "He's my boyfriend." I told Mo, "This is my sister." She looked at him and said, "Boyfriend? No way! How long has this been going on?" "Not very long," he said. "A week officially, but we've known each other all year." "Did she tell you about me?" she asked. It was dark, but I could tell Mo felt awkward. He probably wasn't sure what she meant. Did I tell him about her in general, or about her recent suicide attempt? I wanted to jump in to guide his answer. I wanted to cue him into the safer assumption, being that I told him about her in general. But before I could, Mo said, "Yeah, she told me she loves you." Sigrid laughed. "I went to my first therapy session today. It was exhausting. I mostly just unloaded on the doctor. She took notes and assured me she can help me. She told me people who grow up in houses with volatile parents can become hypervigilant toward fluctuations in other people's moods to protect themselves. I told her how I used to nudge Sigrid's ribs when I noticed tension rising. She said, "It sounds like you were trying to protect your sister, too." We talked about how I used to do Sigrid's homework. She acknowledged that I was a kid with good intentions, however, that wasn't the best way to help her. I asked, "Then what is the best way to help her?" She said, "I'm not sure. Have you asked her?" We have another session booked later this week. When I got home, I tried to take a nap, but I couldn't. I heard screaming and a door slam above me. The man was yelling, "Come back here." It sounded worse than usual. It sounded like his girlfriend was trying to get away. She was shrieking, "No, leave me alone, you're hurting me." I didn't know what to do. I texted Mo, "It sounds bad upstairs, what should I do?" He was in an exam. He didn't read my text. "It sounds like someone is fighting above us," I texted the group chat with my roommates. They were studying. They weren't looking at their phones. I stood in my room with my hand on my chest. The woman screamed again. I hesitated, then darted out of my room and out of the apartment. I rushed up the stairs. Their door was open. The girl was in the doorframe, trying to leave. The guy was yanking her arm, not letting her go. "Leave her alone!" I shouted down the hall. She looked up at me, and he let go of her. "This isn't what it looks like," he said. "Just leave her alone," I repeated. He let go and slammed the door shut. She straightened herself, walked toward me, and we both reached out our hands. I invited her to follow me to my apartment. She nodded and came with me down the stairs. I brought her right into my bedroom because that felt safer somehow. I could lock the apartment door and my bedroom door. He had torn her shirt and she was crying. She looked disheveled and distressed. I left her in my room for a moment to get her a glass of water. When I returned, I handed it to her and I asked if she was okay. She said, "I'm okay. Thank you. It's weird. I can hear him pacing over your room, I think. I can hear him talking on his phone." I nodded. "Yes, the floors are thin. I've been hearing you for a while. I was really worried about you." "I should have known that," she said. "I can hear you too." "What do you mean?" I frowned. "I heard you crying the last couple weeks. I was concerned about you too. Are you okay?" The girl's name is Isabel. She and I lay on my bedroom floor, listening to the floorboards creak above us. She told me she and Dan had broken up a number of times already, but this was the last time. "It's really the last time," she said, as if I wouldn't believe her. She asked me if I had been crying about a boy, and I said no. I told her about Sigrid. I told her how she'd tried to kill herself, and how I sat with her in the hospital for 5 days. I told her how Jerry and my parents were mad at me, and how I'm struggling in all my classes and have had to defer my exams. I told her Mo and my friends were worried, and that I just started therapy. She said, "It sounds like a lot of people want to help you." I nodded. I am lucky to have people who notice when I'm not doing well and who want to help me. Not everyone has that. I asked, do you have people who want to help you? She said, I don't think anyone knows I need help. I didn't know Sigrid needed help. There was this distance between us. When I first moved out, I felt like I'd abandoned her. I left her alone in that house with our parents. I felt guilty. But I was eager to move out. I wanted to get away. I loved living in the dorms my first year. I loved moving into my apartment with Candace and Sadaya. I felt free. I grew up walking on eggshells. I felt constantly drained and overwhelmed. It was a relief to live somewhere new, to take classes I liked, to have my own room, and to live with people who were calm and easy to be around. Sigrid and I never got along. We were never friends. We lived in the same space, endured the same parental trauma, ate the same Ritz cracker-encrusted food, and felt the same grief when our grandma died. We were sisters. I cried for a week after I was dumped by a guy who looked like a blobfish. Sigrid had to sleep in our bedroom with me while I sobbed into my pillow. She and I were in a fight. The fight was trivial, but I was mad. I was giving her the silent treatment. After 7 days of crying, I woke up to a text from my ex that said, "Did you egg my house?" I laughed. I knew immediately that Sigrid had done it. While I kept her up with my crying and ignored her, she tracked down his address, purchased or stole eggs, walked down his street with a carton, and flung them at his house. After reading his text, I looked down at her. She was asleep in the bunk bed beneath me, her mouth ajar. She was exhausted from her evening out egging boys who were mean to me. Even when she and I were fighting or hadn't spoken in months, there has never been a time when I would hesitate to bury a body for her. I was so disappointed in her for not graduating high school. She used to talk my ear off in our bedroom about moving away, getting out of Drysdale and living some weird, exciting life. I knew she was capable of doing that. It bothered that she had no follow-through. I wondered if I could have done something, controlled her in some way, to force her to make better choices. I couldn't talk to her.
I felt this mixture of guilt, disappointment, resentment, and care for her. I don't know how to communicate with someone when I have negative or complicated feelings for them. She and I always fought. To my credit, the communication skills modeled for us involved screaming and punching drywall. I didn't know what to say. I had no idea what was going on in her life. I didn't know she felt so isolated. I didn't know about Greta's drug problem. I didn't know how troubled or alone she felt. I didn't realize she was depressed. I didn't realize how sensitive she felt about our family. I wish I'd known. I wish I'd asked. I asked Isabel, "What can I do to help you?" She and I stayed in my room for hours. She wanted to hear Dan leave so we could go back upstairs and collect her belongings. She made plans to stay at her mom's house. She didn't want to risk going up while he was still there. She wanted to be sure he was out of the house. She didn't want to abandon all her things. All her photos were in the apartment, all her clothes. "Maybe we can smoke him out," she said. I nodded. "I have an idea," and texted Mo. Mo knocked on the door wearing his security guard uniform. Dan peeked his head out into the hall and said, "Can I help you?" Mo said, "We need to evacuate the building. There's been a bomb threat." My roommates and neighbors were in on it. I texted them about what was happening. We all stood outside across the street. Isabel was inside hiding. Dan frowned. "A bomb threat? What?" Mo said, "Yes, we all need to get out of the building immediately." Dan said, "Is this a prank threat? Who the hell would bomb a fourplex?" "What the? Really?" Mo said, "Making bomb threats is a criminal offense. It doesn't matter if it's real or a hoax. Don't touch anything. Don't stand near the windows. We have to get out of here as calmly as possible." He followed Mo outside. Sigrid, Dr. Jong, said, "Writing will help me process my thoughts and feelings." I warned her I'm a bad writer, that I failed high school English, but she said that didn't matter. Do it anyway.
Apparently, writing helps us work through our painful experiences. According to her, research suggests that writing about our life's traumatic moments can help us learn and develop coping skills. I'm not sure I buy that, but I'm not a doctor. I don't know if she's going to read this, or if I'm just writing it for myself. It feels like homework. Actually, it feels lousier than homework. I'd rather write about Magellan than about my own traumatic memories. This exercise involves dwelling on topics that make me feel bad, and it exposes my shoddy writing abilities, which are embarrassing. I'm not sure why a psychologist would recommend torturing a person who recently attempted suicide, but I'm uneducated, lowbrow, anti-intellectual, a Philistine, I think. I'm not confident I know what the word Philistine means, but you get me, right? I'm boneheaded. Maybe I should erase that. I bet therapists don't take kindly to their patients being self-deprecating. God only knows what torture I'd be in for if Dr. Jong gets wind that I'm deeply insecure. I told her I'd rather write about the moon, but she gave me a look my teachers used to give me, which means, just do what I say. I think the moon is a woman. People always say, the man in the moon, but there's no way the moon is a dude. She's got a soulful face. She's gorgeous. In French, the moon is a feminine word. The sun is a man, but the moon, la lune, she's a lady. It was courteous of me to say I'd rather write about the moon than write this, because the truth is, I'd rather write about garbage. I'd rather write about human goosh. I was polite enough to not say that to Dr. J because, like the moon, I am also a lady. Part of why I feel rotten about this therapy assignment is because I've actually written about all this before. I kept a detailed diary. I don't think that ever helped me. In fact, it may have contributed to my issues. I got way too in my head, depressed. Maybe I was doing it wrong. I'm not sure. I'm not confident that I know how to do anything properly. I'm trying to keep this a secret from my doctor, but the truth is, I am profoundly self-conscious and pretty convinced that I'm dumb. I wish I could show Dr. Jong my old journal so she could tell me where I went wrong, but I think my sister stole it. I can't find it anywhere. We don't actually get much choice in life, do we? I used to think I could do anything, but that's not really how things work. It's a facade. The truth is, we get very little wiggle room. We're born where we are, with the bodies we have, the smarts we've got, and our destinies all mapped out. It's preordained, or at least I think it is. I have to do what I'm asked to do. There is no escape. In the 12th grade, my friend Greta went to a party without me. I said I had the flu, but I lied. I just wasn't up for it. I felt lazy. She went alone, drank a lot, and started feeling sick. She puked in the backyard, then wandered through the house until she found an empty bedroom to sleep in. I know this because she told me the following Monday. She said she woke up hours later to a boy asleep beside her. She assumed it was his room. She watched his chest move up and down in the dark. She thought he looked peaceful. She felt warmth radiate from him and listened to him breathe. In the same way that puppy litters cuddle, she curled into him and nodded back to sleep. She and I used to do that when I slept over at her place. It was platonic. It felt like we were drowsy baby creatures in a nest, little pink baby rats or ugly little birds. She woke up later to find him making an unwanted advance. Startled, she said, "I'm gay." She was shocked, both by what was happening and by what came out of her mouth. She had never said that she was gay out loud before, not even to me. That was her way of saying no, but I guess it wasn't clear enough. I guess the guy thought she was just irrelevantly coming out to him. In the morning, everyone who slept over walked to get breakfast at the diner around the corner. He sat across from her. She ordered blueberry pancakes, and they discussed movies. They joked. As far as I know, she's never told anyone this story, except me. At first, she didn't give me all the details. She just said she woke up and he was making an unwanted advance. She said that casually. Her tone was light. It was as if she were talking about something less serious. She said nonchalantly, Well, a gross thing happened to me at the party. I remember looking at her after she said that. I said, "That's really gross. Maybe we should go to the hospital." It'd been 2 days. She said she had already showered 40 times. We could still go, I said. She said no, she didn't want to. I felt so guilty about not going to that party. I still think about it. When people ask me, "What's your biggest regret?" I say, I didn't go to a party once, and they think I'm being funny. She had her dad's car that day at school. At lunch, she drove us to McDonald's. On the way there, I asked her to stop at a pharmacy. I got myself a scratch card and bought her the morning after pill. I tossed it at her and said, "You might as well take that," then quickly changed the subject. I said, "Should we get chocolate or strawberry milkshakes?" She said, "Chocolate," while she swallowed the pill dry. We ate in the school parking lot. While we downed our milkshakes and split a large fry, she announced, "I think I'm gay." I choked on my food. She explained that she had said that to the guy at the party instead of no. She told me she had been thinking it for a while, but was pretty sure now. I said, "You're gay? Really?" She nodded. She seemed worried about how I'd react. I started laughing. I almost choked on a fry. She said, "What? You won't believe it," I said. "What?" she asked again. Then I told her, "I am too." It was obvious we were gay in retrospect. She and I used to pick boys to have crushes on. I thought of it like a game. She picked a guy named Ethan because he knew how to play the guitar.
He choked on his wine. I didn't mean to shock him. I was just feeling a little drunk and blunt. I had stewed about this since Thanksgiving and felt angry. It wasn't my business to share that information, but I did it anyway. I didn't want Billy to refer to Kevin as her ex-boyfriend again. I thought if I continued to nod along to that lie, I would have to live like it were true, and it wasn't. It bothered me. His shock knocked me out of my tinsel trance. He said, "Are you being serious? When?" I told him it happened when she was 17. He stammered. He asked if I was sure. I nodded. Yes, absolutely. He said, "What did he do exactly? Did he just touch her without permission? Was it—" I frowned at him for saying, "just touch her without permission," as if that's tolerable. I tried to say what it was exactly, but I stumbled. I said, "No, it was a violation?" He whispered. I said, "Yeah. He acted against her will while she told him she was gay." He gasped, "She's gay?" That made me laugh. It broke the tension. I almost spit a mouthful of wine on the carpet. Billy laughed awkwardly with me, recognizing the preposterousness of zeroing in on Greta's gayness when that wasn't the focal point of the story. His face turned bright pink. Marg entered the room around this time. She brought a platter of sugar cookies and marshmallow peanut butter squares. She asked, "What's so funny?" Rather than reply, Sigrid was just telling me about how her friend experienced a violation and is a lesbian. Billy said, "Oh, we're just laughing at the dog." The dog was sitting in front of us. She looked at me in a way that made me feel like, somehow, she understood what we were talking about. I could sense that she didn't think highly of Billy. We each ate one of the squares Marg brought and chatted with her about her classes. She was in a Renaissance literature class that she liked. She told us about Paradise Lost. Later that evening, she and I got into a fight because I lost my cool and threw pie guts at Lom. I watched Marg scold me and realized she didn't understand my perspective. She wanted to maintain peace, ignore our problems, and placate everyone. Her objective was to avoid conflict. Mine wasn't. I wanted issues to be acknowledged. I wanted to address it when our family behaved badly. I was sick of playing along. I felt like I was a black sheep, and she was an enabler. I was the target of everyone's frustration, and she kept the peace for everyone but me. I remember standing outside, trying to leave,
while Marg cried that I was upsetting everyone. She told me to grit my teeth more, like she did. I felt like I was falling down a well, and rather than offer a hand, Margit reprimanded me for screaming. I wanted to unload on her. I wanted to scream that our family was voting for someone who committed a violation against my friend. I didn't get to escape to college, make new friends, or get any reprieve from Drysdale and our family, like she did. I had to stew there in a pot of Jerry's essential oils while I watched my friend disintegrate. I felt all alone. It was intolerable to feel that way and be pelted by my family's ignorance. I was distraught by the fact that our family supported Kevin. It made me feel like all the light on earth had gone out. When I was a kid, I loved being around my family. Listening to my mom, grandma, and Jerry laugh felt comforting, like hearing birds chirp. I liked to eavesdrop on my dad talking to whoever Jerry was dating at the time. I would sit between them, with my face resting on my knuckles, thinking my dad was so smart. There was a comforting smell I associated with holidays and our family. It's this mix of cigarette smoke, potatoes, and gravy. I used to love existing in the chatter of our family, breathing in that familiar smell. A veil was lifted when I got older. A lot of the glittery happiness brushed off when I understood more of what was being said around me. Dad was often making offhand racist comments. Everyone was always laughing at sexist jokes that weren't funny. I found myself huffing that smoky potato smell, trying to cling to the nostalgia of my childhood, while being pelted with intermittent homophobic remarks about feminine boys and women who don't shave their armpits. I don't shave my armpits. I wear clothes that don't expose that around them. I wear high-collared shirts so they can't see my shark tattoo. I keep my socks on, even when they are dirty, so they can't see the piece of Lego I have tattooed to my foot. I had to hide who I was around them. I felt disconnected from them, like I was a stranger. I felt lonelier around them than I did when I was by myself. When I played with my toys in our basement, I listened to my family above me. I could identify who everyone was by the creak their steps made on the floor. I knew if the person walking was my mom, dad, Margit, or our cat by how heavily they stepped and how fast they moved. Dad was heavy-footed. He always moved furniture around. He dropped things a lot. He swung doors open like there was a surprise behind them. My mom walked briskly, always in a rush. She slammed cupboards. She was often sweeping. I heard her kneel down to pick things up off the floor. Margit walked lightly. She tiptoed. She turned doorknobs entirely before pushing doors open and shut them with the doorknob still cranked, so the door would fit back into its frame as quietly as possible. She never slammed the cupboards. Lou, our cat, stepped unabashedly, with no consideration regarding whether she was making the floors creak. I could hear her paws stomp across the floor. When she came down the basement stairs, each of her steps thudded. She walked without questioning if her steps could be lighter. She occupied the space she was in with the weight that she was. I could gauge everyone's mood by the noises above me. I could sense when my parents were in bad moods, when they had transformed into swamp monsters, by how fast they moved and how hard they stepped. When they were angry, dust showered down from the beams in the ceiling. It rained on me and my toys. When that happened, I hid in the basement like a bird before a tsunami. When I was little, I thought adults fought for serious, important reasons. I thought of their anger the way I thought of natural disasters. I considered it unavoidable, an unfortunate matter of fate. When there were swamp monsters stomping in my sky, I played that there was a storm in the basement. I played that the sound of breaking glass was thunder. When people shouted, it was heavy rain. The storm ended when it got quiet, the dust settled, and everyone walked quickly. I didn't leave the basement until the house had been silent for hours. When I finally emerged, the main floor felt like a town after a volcanic eruption. Everything looked eerie and still. Occasionally, I crawled halfway up the basement staircase when the fights were still in progress. I looked through the crack under the door at everyone's feet like a mouse. Typically, Swamp Monster Dad was screaming threats. Sometimes he threw things. Once in a while, Swamp Monster Mom got violent. Dad was much bigger than she was, though. It was a considerably worse storm when he was the one instigating thunder. Margit was always mute, no matter what was happening. I rarely ever went further than halfway up the stairs. When the arguments got really bad, Jerry brought us to her house. I think Margit snuck off and called her to come get us. I usually brought Joe with me. I pretended the toy world was planning Joe a surprise party and that we had to leave the house so they could decorate. In December, I read every article Greta ever sent me. At first, I was reading them to connect with her when I couldn't anymore. However, I inadvertently learned a lot. Greta had referenced books sometimes in our conversations. I got a library card to read them. When the library didn't have copies, I filled out forms requesting that they buy them.